Hi, all sharing fans. This is David, the sharing guy, and sunrise, sunset, calculated fields. It's time to begin. Go to community, search for calculated field foundations. You'll see a video, and on the bottom, a couple of attachments. The handout has only 3 slides. The first one has these important icons to represent the different types of data. And the money slide that lists all the calculated field functions. Let's focus on the data types. The first two are a little bit more advanced than the others. We see a T for text, a TF for Boolean, true or false, a calendar for date, a hashtag for numeric, and a $sign for currency. Next, let's focus on the functions by zooming in a little bit. And notice that those advanced types, those are actually 2 full columns, and we will get to those at the more advanced levels. The column on the far right also returns all different types, so we're going to ignore that column for now. There's only one function that returns a currency type called convert currency, so that's an easy one. We could remove that one from the list. The same is true on the true-false condition function that returns a Boolean. There's only one function for that. So let's remove this one from the list as well. And it leaves us with numeric, text, and dates. We're going to focus on those 3. These are 3 data types: numbers, text, and dates. It might look like a lot of functions, so let's take a closer look at some of these functions. We're going to start with format date. Here's an example of 08/12/2006. You might think you know what that means, but it depends on where you live. It might mean August the 12th, or it might mean December the 8th. If you format the date, you can change it to text, and this way it won't be vague. At least whenever you put the year first, I believe what always follows is the month and the day. So sure enough, we're talking about August 12th, 2006. Now that we know about formatting dates, let's take a look at what else we could format. We could format a number. For example, 80 and an eighth, or 80.125. Say this was dollars and cents, so you needed only 2 decimal points. Sometimes you round down, sometimes you round up, 80.12, 80.13. The point is you might need to format the number, format the value to 2 places. So that's what format number does. We could remove that from the list. Next up, we see you could format text. For example, text could be all uppercase or all lowercase, or something called proper case, also known as camel case. Each of these 3 types also have a constant. So let's take a date constant. You might need, for example, January 1st, 2025. That may not be a date that's already in the Workday system. So if you need that date, you could create it with a function called date constant. As you might have guessed, there's also a constant for numbers. Like, let's say you needed 3.14 or the number 1 million. If it wasn't in the system, you'd have to create a constant for that number. Maybe you needed it to do some arithmetic. Similarly with text, there's a text constant, like the word hello. We have now removed both the formatting and the constants for all 3 of these data types. Those are all quite simple functions. Let's take a closer look at a date function called increment or decrement date. This is quite a popular one in the world of HR, where you have a hire date and you might need to increment by a year so you know the 1-year anniversary, or increment by, let's say, 30 days because you're going to do a 30-day review. Another popular example is you need to subtract a date sometimes to get the day before something happened. For example, somebody's most recent pay raise, subtract a day from it to get the day before they were given that raise. Next, let's take an example of a numeric function, arithmetic calculation. Well, this is arithmetic that we've learned at a young age, such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. An example of a text function is substring text. Let's take, for example, first name and last name. like Logan McNeil. And what if we wanted to get the initials? Well, how would you go about getting the L and the M? You would need to use substring text for that. I said earlier we were going to ignore anything that had the word lookup in it. So for now, we're going to also get rid of these three. And you'll see we have hardly any functions left. Wrapping up this introduction to the data types and the functions, let's take a look at one more. Often you need to know the difference between two dates. For example, if you know someone's date of birth, you could use the date today and do a date difference and find out their age. Well, just like earlier, we were formatting a number and we wanted only 2 digits after the decimal point. The detail you'll need as you're defining a date difference calculated field is if you want to know the date difference in days or months or years. Typically, when you think of somebody's age, you think of it in years, but of course, it depends on how old they are. At a very young age, I know it's common to use a number of months up until age 2 or 3 years old. Notice that we're doing a calculation to get the difference between two dates, and that returns to us a number. So it's defined here under the numeric column, as compared to what you might have thought, which would have been the date column. The inputs to the date difference function are dates, but the result is a number. So that's why date difference is listed here under the number column. Before wrapping up, I could leave you with a challenge is that maybe there's a mistake as to where these functions were listed. Returning now to the list of all the calculated field functions, it should not be overwhelming, or at least less overwhelming, now that we've drastically reduced the total number of functions that you had never heard of. It's also an opportunity for me to leave you with an even more advanced challenge of finding more than one mistake in the categorizing of these functions. So we welcome you again to Sunrise Sunset Calculated Fields. It has begun. Enjoy the challenges.